if people haven't heard, we did literally the best podcast on rehab last time. I think that's what I called it. And that was my best podcast of the entire year because I thought it was really good. But just to start off for people, they want to know how's the wrist doing? How are we doing there?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back on. I enjoyed it. The wrist is good, man. Like I don't honestly, I forgot that we talked about it last time, and I forget that it happened. I mean, I haven't like it's been the wrist is full go. I haven't thought about it, and I don't even. Yeah,
Well,
it's
I think
normal.
that's beautiful because it's like to me it seems like the mark of like you've fully rehabbed when you've forgotten about it. Like I
Yeah,
think that's beautiful.
yeah. It's the same. It's like my wrist. Like my wrist and my back are two of the injuries that I've had really from training in the past, let's say like 5 years. And I don't remember them unless someone brings it up. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, like that happened. But I legitimately forget which, like you said, and even for me, like that is something that I look for in a good rehab is like, even if something new pops up, it's not because of some past thing. It's just like a new thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think it's important to bring that to start there because, like, for people that listen to the last one, they'll want to like I think you were about 80% last time we talked. Like, you were back to doing push-ups and bench press and stuff, but it was. I mean, it'd been like a month or two after. Like, for people that don't know, I don't even want to look at the video, but you jumped off this like whatever your body height, basically jumping up to a retaining wall, and then the rock slipped out from underneath you, and you fell and landed on your wrist, and it was swollen and red, and it was like. It was no joke. And I got you
Yeah.
pretty much on top of that after that. And you had already made you went from basically not being able to move it to doing push ups and bench press again. And then like you were just steadily on that rehab. So it was impressive to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it last time. I think I got back to 315 on rebound bench in under 60 days, I think, with it feeling good. So,
That's awesome. Okay. So you posted some stuff and, I don't know if this is like I'm not that much older than you, but I definitely don't understand internet lingo and like the way you post sometimes I feel is cryptic where you'll talk about things. I'm like I feel like I'm missing half the conversation. But you've posted some stuff recently about like healing and like specifically I think like last night I think you posted about a guy who had a shoulder labrum. It was like 2.5 months in. What I'm getting at is what do you what is your developing philosophy kind of on how you think about injury in terms of this because it seems like you're really pushing the barriers of like what people can perceive of as possible with this but like how's your perspective on injury and rehabilitation changed over the last few years?
um, yeah, man, that's a good question. Let's see. How has it changed? Well, the basic principles are still the same and still hold true. In the sense of like our body provides us feedback, and that feedback is what we use to then determine like how we utilize and what we're ready to do. Right. I would say that the part of it that has upgraded, at least for myself, is understanding there's like two different things. So like one thing is like feedback, which we've talked about. That's what if you feel pain in your knee, that's feedback from your body. So that's one aspect of kind of what we can get or what we can utilize. Second aspect that's a little bit different is, and this is a concept that I've just recently started to understand. I don't know that I fully understand it quite yet, but like it's the concept of feed forward. And so feed forward control is basically uh, I am able to, or it's a mechanism in which you are able to see ahead of time, you're able to predict, and you're able to adjust, and you're able to modify before the thing actually happens, right? And so it's like the opposite of feedback, where like feedback is, let's say I have pain in my knee. Like if we give a specific example, let's say I'm doing a depth drop, and it's like I have pain on my knee in the depth drop. Feed forward would be, I know, like I can predict ahead of time. I don't like what position I put myself in to elicit that, and I can make the adjustment before it happens, so I never actually get the feedback, and my body's actually in the position before it happens.
That so to me what that strikes is this idea of like intention is your forward looking and then backward feedback is like your body's reporting on what's happened. I've
Yeah.
heard it said it's life is a mystery going forward, it is science looking backwards, or another way like art is kind of the creative intent of moving forward, and then science is the like, well, what do we think about it? Are we going to measure these things? So I like how you position yourself. So you see yourself as the person in the middle of that dichotomy between like the feedback and the feed forward of like looking back on what happened versus setting an intention for what will happen.
Not necessarily the person in the middle, but it's more of I want to be able to like set. Yeah, I'm more of the creator of it, like creating that future of whatever that thing is. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but like let's say just if we keep it with like athletics, like let's say the type of athlete that you want to be or the way that you want to feel when you play a sport, right? Just take that, get extremely clear on what that is. Like what is the picture and what is the feeling of that? And when I say feeling, I mean like what is the actual physical sensation like in your chest, in your body? Like what is that actual thing? Separate the physical feeling from, like, use the picture to get the feeling, separate the picture from the feeling, have the feeling when you're in the training, and we want that feeling to be greater than any sensation or feedback that you could get. So you use that feeling because that's like the feed forward. That's the thing that's in the future. You use that feeling to then make any adjustments that you need to make to be able to continue having that feeling, because then you pull that future like towards you, right? And
Yeah.
and so that's, that's like specifically for athletes. It's like, okay, you want to be fast. Let's say you want to run fast. What is it that you would feel, and what is it that you would see if you're running fast? Take that and now bring the actual physical sensation into training right now and use that, like be that.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I just following you for the last like year or so, whenever you came out to Marks afterwards, it just like I think you are probably the most underrated mind on social media from what I've seen, because the things you say are so like you hit to the quick, like the raw core of like I resonate so deeply with the things you're saying, because as someone that really cares and wants to perform as well, like I'm like, that's it. Like it's like you say it and it's so good, but I don't think people like understand it. They just
Well, then
judge
that's on
from
me for needing to communicate more clearly, which
yeah.
is a fair point, right? Because it's it wasn't a conversation, but I think maybe I saw a comment the other day where it was like, just, I guess for me, I have to keep in mind that different people are at different levels in terms of how long they've been invested in this. And so for me, like I've been training for 15 years and just put a lot of attention, energy into it, right? So there's over the course of that time, like you learn things, you feel things, you get to deeper levels of things, because like, sure, year one, you're bodybuilding and you're trying to get big and look look nice or whatever it is, right? By the time you get to year 15, if that's all you're doing, you're going to get bored. Or for me, if that's all I was doing, I would get bored with it and I would leave. And so it's good feedback for me to hear, honestly, where some of it isn't communicated where you can understand, or where it's not understood that well, because then I'm like, okay, I need to be able to do that more clearly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Like I think that's the single, like if there was one piece of feedback, it's just like
Yeah.
refine the way you're talking, because a lot of times I feel like your Instagram is a public journal, which is I use that for my Substack in many ways, and like, but it's like it is a straight transmission of the way, if there was something you could translate the words that you're trying to like take an intention and a feeling, which is this felt experience, funnel it through your cognitive capacity to put words in, and then write it down into a two-dimensional page. And it just is so much that gets lost in it. But it's like the work for you is like the more you can start to sculpt this into a language and like a way that people can like set very simple. Like I always use ATG as an example. One of the reasons it was so successful is because Ben literally nailed it down to like 8 exercises. And whether or not whatever you think of that is like the genius of marketing of like, these are the 4 knee essentials. Oh, I can do that. And it like the printed, I mean, think about the Bible, for example, the 10 commandments, that's stuck around for a while. Like it's those kind of things
Mm-hmm.
really, like when you give people principles and really things to understand. I love that feed forward thing.
Mm-hmm.
Share an
And
example.
well, it's funny you say that. I'll make one more comment on that, because
Yeah.
I do have, over the course of the past probably year and a half, I have developed a course, or whatever it is that you want to call it, where I'm taking right now I'm taking 2 individuals through it that I'm preparing to be able to take clientele for me, right?
Nice.
And so the goal with that is basically to like get what's in my head out on a piece of paper.
Yep.
And then I also use, it's different things that I've learned from, it's different technology that I've learned of like how to basically just like how people learn, and then how can I put together a course in which people actually understand what it is that I'm saying. So it's not necessarily just like information, question, answer. It's like there's hands-on stuff where, like, let's say what you get on Instagram is kind of the significance of something, or it's a thought of something. This would also include like mass of that, or doingness of it, so that it gets out of here and it's like out in front. It's like, okay, what does it actually mean for when you do a movement with pain, like what does it actually mean for that to be wired into your body, right? That would be like one example. Like someone, and I'm like, okay, show me what that would mean. And, try to tell me, like, no, show me without saying any words, like, show me, right? So it's like, okay, here, movement, right? Like it like a demo of it, where it's like, then it becomes real.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So what's been cool is one of the guys that I'm taking through that, he got released. He was in professional baseball last year, and he got released. And then I'm taking him through this because he's going to coach for me eventually. And then he's just like taking it and freaking exploded with it. And then he got re-signed, and now he's like going to spring training. So it's like, it's cool because I've seen him actually like, and he's been training with me for 3 years. So he already had a very good, like almost cognitive intellectual understanding of it. But going through this thing that I put together has made it more real for him, where he's able to actually like make it real for himself in a very similar way to where I've made it real for myself. And he was doing a really good job before. It's just like this kind of clicked to another level. So it's interesting that you say that, because it's also, when you're on Instagram, or when I'm on Instagram, you said it pretty well. It's basically, it's kind of like a public journal. It's just I'm putting there like whatever it is that I'm experiencing. And that's the I don't know, the top layer of it. Then like underneath, it's cool because I'm actually figuring out how to like take all of that and put it into something that can be understood. And it's not easy. Like we're going through it for like 5 or 6 months, right? So it's not easy, but because I also don't agree with dumbing things down, and not dumbing things down, but like it should be able to be simple, but also like go into simple and complexity. So I'm not going to try to say like there's 1, 2, 3 things, but I do think I'm on the verge of like having something where I can be like, okay, I'm going to take you through this, and you're actually going to understand what it is.
Yeah, well, I always think about it like distilled. Like, for example, like a shot of whiskey is far more powerful than a beer, and and so like it's.
Is it? I have no idea. Honestly.
Look, I'm speaking. I've drank maybe like 5, 6 times in my life. It is not very much, but the point of like consciously, I think you at least understand the concept of like things that are distilled have gotten down to a more potent form. So let's just say poison works the same way. So, the idea though is that like I resonate with what you're doing because I am doing the doing part, and when I see you put words to it, I'm like, that's a beautiful way of saying it. And I really like that. And I think that there's one of the things that I really, so there's a few ways to go from here, but I really like what you just started, the guy that's trained with you. What, to me, it seems like the major role of there's like layers of this in some sense, because there's coaches who are inspiring, but there's like, you can kind of connect to like a deeper channel of emotion. So I'll give you an example, and I know you'll run with it. But when I was back on the East Coast, I had a gym and I would work out with people, and I had like 40 or so people that come in regularly and work with me. And I realized in hindsight, I was the hub of that wheel. So like I brought, like, people would just show up, and I would give them the energy and the intention to kind of help them like set a direction for their life. And I realized that I don't know if everybody, the question is whether or not everybody can develop, like level up, so to speak, and develop that level of like inspiration for the people, or if some people just are more geared towards that. And maybe everyone can, but there's levels. But it's like, you seem to be someone that's able to channel a ton of intensity and focus in your attention, and that naturally brings like the hub of your wheel, the spoke, you change the people around you. And it seems to me like the role of a coach, like another way of a coach is like an inspiration, or like maybe it's even a different role in some sense than like a coach, like an igniter. Like you're an igniter in some sense, where you're bringing this kind of level of consciousness up in some sense around people.
Thank you.
What do you think of that, like both for you specifically, but also as like a template for like people who also find themselves in the center of that role, like just knowing the impact you've had on other people? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well. So what's the question? Because I mean, what's the question?
The problem it's a bad question, because there's like 3 different things we're going to. Is just,
well, let's go first, because one thing you said, like, can it be developed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That was one of the topics. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, let's go with that. Do you think that intensity and intention can be developed, and then how much?
So whether I think it can be or not is kind of doesn't really matter. I know that for myself, it has been.
Okay.
So that is what I know, and I know that like the individual that I just talked about, it has happened for him as well. And so I 100% think it can, because I guess for myself in my journey, there's a point at the end of 22 and the start of 2023 where I basically like I got some knowledge, I got some data, and I understood things to a higher level, and like things clicked, and like in 3 months I made more progress than I'd made in like
Yeah.
6 years of training. I don't know if it was 6 years of training, but it's just like it took me to a different level, right? And I understood how to invest more of myself into what I was doing. And that sounds super like if I just say, oh, invest more of yourself into what you're doing, it sounds like, well, like what does that mean?
It makes
So
perfect sense to me, but I know
I,
that
I
people
know,
will.
I know, but
Yeah.
it does. If I want to be able to help a specific person that it doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
make progress with it, then I need to be able to distill that into what it means,
So
right?
what does it mean? Yeah.
So right, so that's where it comes down to like, what is it that that I have available for use, or that let's say I'm talking to Joe here, who's an athlete. Like, what is it that you have available for use? He could use an emotion. He can use a thought. He can use a muscle. He can use a tissue. He can use a music, or he can use music or a sound. He can use another person that is around him. He has all these different things that are available for use, right? And these things have different like layers or different levels. Like if we look specifically at emotion, being able to understand what emotion is. If I look at like myself and there's a certain thing, I have an emotion in between that connects me to that thing. It could be anger. Like let's say, I don't know, I got bit by a horse. I'm angry at the horse. That's my emotion in between those things. Let's say it's a girl. There's a different emotion that's between those things, right? So understanding what the emotion is, and that we can tap, like for Joe, he can tap into different levels of emotion. And it's like, okay, got it. Now there's different volumes of emotion. So let's say like I could be like, yeah, I'm kind of pissed off, or like I'm really pissed off. There's different volumes to that emotion, and that is what's going to allow him to like tap into a little bit more of actually investing in himself more, right?
Okay.
So starting to look at like what is it that Joe actually has available to him that he can use, because that for me, I know like that is what I utilize to be able to direct intention into something, to be able to direct a lot of force into something, is like every aspect of like my awareness and beingness, that includes my thoughts, my emotions, my actual physical body, like all of that I can take and I can channel all of that into like this one stream. And so for the individual, it's like we can break that down, help them to understand what they actually have available, how efficient or how much are they using of those things, and then like learn how to use more of that.
Yeah. So I think it was a post you put up the other day where you talked about the idea of like having 100 units of energy or something you could focus on.
Sure.
That kind of going the same thing is like the better trained you get, the more of 100 you can use to something. And most people does that, am I tracking with the same analogy?
Yeah. So yes. So like we could take something simple like a slow lower lunge or a slow lower deep push up, right? Um, we can utilize that to start to notice like where you don't have where your attention goes when stress comes in. And so we can use that to like determine how good are you at like recruiting all those different units of attention that you have available.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like let's say, I fail in that at a minute and 13. I don't yet understand how to tap into that, which is like what will get me to a minute and 30. But it's there and it's available and it's possible. It's just like we need to uncover that and pull that out of that person.
Okay. So to try and summarize, the growth you've had has been becoming more capable of channeling more of you, and whether
Yes.
other forms, whether it's a thought, emotion, and even external energy, these are all forms of energy you can channel towards an outcome. And the better you get at being, whether it's presence, whether it's intention, whether it's focus, those all allow you to do an action, the doing with the most force and the most impact possible. And that
Mm-hmm.
for you is like the growth you've seen with channeled effort over the past year, specifically with this 3 month, like this section late 2022 23, where you really like things clicked and you're like, oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, yeah, because with the slow lowers, well, I guess, yeah. So with the slow lowers is understanding that what it takes to do an effective slow lower when I first started doing them was everything that I had. And so, and I've said this on podcasts before, but I was like, when I first started doing the slow lowers, I would get into the slow lower, I'd finish the slow lower, and I'd be like, okay, done with the slow lower. I can take a break. I can rest. I'm done. Right. But what eventually clicked for me was if I was that way while I was in the slow lower, I wouldn't actually be able to complete the slow lower because I don't have like if I didn't have a high level of attention and awareness and effort in the slow lower, then I wouldn't be able to complete it. Right. So then it clicked for me. So I was like, okay, when I'm out of the slow lower, I want to be the exact same way. I might not be doing a slow lower deep push-up, but when I'm having the conversation with you right now, I'm in a slow lower. I want to have everything that is me invested into this conversation.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you've ever been with an individual or talked with or just like seen an individual where it's like when they're, I don't know, like when they're talking to you, like they're talking to you. It's like, it's like, whoa, there's a lot coming from this person, right?
Yeah.
It's that. It's like, it's that, you know, it's that like, it's that energy that is available.
For people who don't know, a slow lower is this masochistic thing that you do where you.
It's no, because it's like it is. I do want to address that because it's not. It is meant to be something that you actually choose to do on purpose and that your body loves, and that is actually the best thing for your system, and that is not something that you hate.
Okay, good. Everyone else would think it is. Yes, I get. Yeah. Well, describe what it is like for people that don't know what it is. Like,
yeah. No, that would be helpful. Okay, so, so basic concept of a slow lower is we'll use a specific example, a deep push-up, right? So a normal deep push-up is you start at the top of a push-up, you go down, let's say you have your hand on boxes, you go down as far between the boxes as you can, you press back up. Normal speed, that would be a normal deep push-up. A slow lower deep push-up, in the way that I utilize them is I start at the top. I want to take 3 to 5 minutes to slowly pull myself into as deep of a position as I can over the course of the 3 to 5 minutes. And then at the end, I want to be able to press back up out of that as rapidly as I can, as if I didn't just do 3 to 5 minutes of work.
Yeah.
So that's the basic concept of a slow lower is you pull yourself into a position over a long period of time, press up as if you didn't just do all that work, because it's a representation that you've learned how to recover as you work, and your body is being more efficient through that.
Yeah. Is the work, so how do you distinguish that between an isometric, or do you think that an isometric, it almost seems isometric seems, well, you have nothing except for the ground, so it's not like you can push in. So it seems almost impossible to do a true isometric, whereas a slow lower gives you an intention of direction, but you have to.
Yes, slower. Like full credit, I got this initially from Jay Schroeder from the call. Okay. He calls them iso extremes. And again, this may not be the way that he specifically interprets them. I just like to say, like, this is my interpretation of it when I talk to him and what I got from it. And this is what I've been utilizing. This is what I found to work for myself. That's it. Right. But so for me, a slow lower is, there's never a stop. It's a continual movement. So it's not an isometric. It's a continual active choice to pull myself into as deep of a position as I can over and over and over and over again, like during the full duration of time. I want to continually move. And I want to do that without getting any feedback, like we talked about earlier. So it's like the feeling that we talked about at the start of whatever it is that you're looking to create. I want that feeling as I pull into position, not receive any feedback, and press up at the end of it as if I didn't just do anything.
Got it. Okay, now these pieces are starting to like really, really click. So the feed forward is to say, if I were to look at, so maybe give an example. I've been working on learning backflips recently.
Nice.
Like the last few months and stuff. But it's really scary for me because I have like very little. I ran track and cross country. I ran cross country and long distance track, I'll say it like that. And I had a lot of eyesight issues and stuff. So there was very little proprioceptive awareness and air awareness. So what I've realized is like I would, at first it's kind of like you just kind of throw it and like, I guess I landed it. If you like a second later, I kind of just like, you go out of consciousness almost. It's like it's there. But what I realized is this kind of saying I'd held in my head of like, there's a version of me that's done this, and that version isn't freaking out. It's confidence. It's relaxed. Because I would watch these other kids and these other adults just do this stuff, and they're so smooth, so relaxed. And it's like there's something that they are doing in the truest, like the people that are doing this the most perfect way possible. Have this like this. There's a felt sense of what it's like to be them when they do that, and then it's like, all right, is that the feed forward mechanism within me hold that idea inside of me as clearly as possible and then do the action whereas fear would be like a feedback, these as opposed to other potential things. And is that an accurate one way of thinking about it per se?
Yeah, yeah, and it could be like if we make maybe the slow lower is simpler, where it's like
Yes,
the
for
the
sure.
picture, the thing that you're attempting to do is press up at the end as if you didn't just slow, as if you
Yeah,
didn't just lower. And so the whole time during the slow lower, like you are processing how to do that, so that by the end you can do that, right?
yes,
And so, but yeah, with the backflip, it would be like, okay, what is the feeling? What is that is like that would be related to when you've done that, and then just simply have that feeling as you go through and as you attempt to do that.
yeah. Yeah, I really so the idea though of the slow lower is not that you did 3 minutes and 30 seconds and you couldn't have done 3 minutes and 40 seconds. It's that you could have done 3 minutes and 40 seconds if like it's not that you are maxing out as slow as you can per se. It's that like it was the intention and that meaning I think people would hear that and say, I'm going to lower as slow as possible and I'm going to set some magical time on the clock that it's like whatever I get to the bottom was as much as I could have done. But that would be a form of feedback where fatigue is a form of feedback as opposed to my body is as capable and strong of being explosive at the end of this as ever. So the fatigue, pain, um, are forms of feedback that you're avoiding as opposed to I'm just channeling the sense of strength. Like, are there
Well,
certain
it's
cues?
yeah. So I will say like if there's no, it's like a two-way street because if there's no feedback or if there's nothing like that, then nothing's really learned because you already know how to
Yes.
do it,
Yeah,
right?
but it's a balance in some sense of not like
Yeah, it's
uniformly. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like being able to stay in that position, being able to do that, even if there's some level of like fatigue or whatever, and being able to learn from that so that you know like better how to come into it next time.
yeah, yeah. What do you okay, so and then it's a because obviously I think that there's this like false perception of like presenting as though this is perfect. There is the perfect session, so to speak, but then there's reality, which is I'm working. You're kind of slowly approximating that every time you go and train. It's another sense of like you're getting closer at chiseling away from this
Yeah,
perfect sense of like this is exactly like a perfect session is I set an intention for exactly where I wanted to be, how I want to do it, and and I went and I was fully present the whole time, and then I like accomplished it and came out of it as though it was just natural, like that
yeah.
almost.
I mean, that's like you said. There's what it is that we're shooting for and the intention. Then there's the reality of what happens,
Yeah.
right? And so I will like I don't even think I yeah like I think the perfect would be there is no feedback.
Yes.
But then also in terms of making growth and growing because that is the objective, right? Because
Mhm.
I don't know if there's necessarily a ceiling because
Yes.
for me there's also a basic like natural law or principle that a line doesn't stay flat. It's either going up or going down. It's either getting
Mhm.
better or it's going worse. If a line stays flat, gravity's going to pull it down,
Yep.
right? So when I think about training in that context in regards to what we just talked about, the goal isn't necessarily to have that perfect session the goal is to have the perfect session where I don't feel anything, but I want to stimulate it so that I learn something. And so that
Yes.
it's like not that perfect session.
Yes.
And
Right.
actively
Yeah.
choosing to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because if I don't do that and like everything is just like perfect all the time, that's like that flat line where nothing's being learned, nothing's being improved, and then that's where it starts to go downhill.
Yeah. Well, and so I think the value of this, because people might listen and be like, this is so heady, I don't get it, just go work out. It's like, well, first off, if they looked at a picture of you for the last 3 years or 4 years, the sheer change in your body is beyond words. I mean, like, it's really, really impressive. But I don't think, I mean, so many people do a lot of junk volume and they just do stuff because it's what they're supposed to do. That if they were to do one single quality, like really present rep, they would get more value from that than they do from like a bunch of, running through stuff. It's like,
Yeah, but it also takes quantity to get quality.
of course. Like that's the thing is like you don't get to
Mm-hmm.
the quality rep without the like. eh, the hard part is that the second I say something, the dichotomy of this is also necessary to be there. So it's like the opposite, and it is a balance of that. It's like you need the intention, but you don't develop the tension unless you go and you do like you figure out what that is. Learning is,
Mm-hmm.
in some sense, the process of developing an intention, but you can only learn if there isn't perfect intention. So it's like you're striving towards something that is like an asymptotic relationship of moving towards it. But I guess what I'm ultimately trying to
Wait,
say is
what was the word? I don't know what that means. What did you say?
asymptote. You know what asymptote is?
No, I
Oh, it's
honestly
something
don't.
that it's a line. It's from calculus. It's a line that approaches infinity but never quite reaches it.
Okay, got it. Thank
Which
you.
is what you're saying is like there's you have this intention, but you're every as close as you get to this thing, it always gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller of a distance, but it never touches it. So, but the idea though is that like you're always moving towards that thing, and it never will be fully actualized, but it's the pursuit of it, and there's a
Yeah,
level of like
yeah, no, 100%. Because there's no like, there's not really any absolutes. Like, there's not a point where you're gonna
except for
get
that
to where
one,
it's like, okay, that's it, right? And
yeah,
so there are the dichotomies.
yes,
There's hot and cold. There's good and bad. There's terrible and great. Like, there's dichotomies, and that's true with anything, including training. And I think
mm-hmm.
that is, to me, that's part of what's fun, because that's the potential of it.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to go, we're talking about like, if I were to go and train, I'm like, there's a cap for what I can do, and I get to that cap, it's like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore,
Yeah.
right? So to me, this is the exciting part for me for anything that I do, is like, whether it's training, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, like whatever, it's like, what is it that is that next thing that I can create and that I can go towards, and I can learn how to, like, I don't know, blow it up, like, get better with it, you know?
Well, so like that ultimately what I'm really trying to get at is I'm pushing the value I see of you being a very strong uh, intentionally led person, because I see the majority of training focus now is that you just grind, get out there, and it's just work for no purpose. And it's like, of course you need both, but there's a level of what I truly don't think people understand is that the intention you set, you'll get what you work for. And if you go in and just mindlessly go through the reps, you might get something, but eventually most people, okay, most people only know how to train based off of feedback. They go, how do I know that was a good workout? Well, I'm sore. How do I know that I did too much? Well, my form, my knee hurt. How do I know? They only know how to stop when they get feedback, and they have not either perceived or trained the capacity to think of themselves as an individual who can feed forward, which, to use the language, I think is brilliant. And like, to me, it's like, if people start to think about things that way, they would they get stuck in these loops where they run in circles over and over, repeating the same thing, and they're trying to, like, for whatever reason, trying to create an outcome, but they never actually sit and think, what is it that I want to create here, and like, how would that feel? And they end up creating pain and problems and missing out on performance because they don't even understand this idea of feed forward. Like, really, what is it? And you've done a really good job of pulling these broader concepts in, like in emotion, these different forms of energy. But it's like, the better, another way of saying this is visualization in some sense, but it's like, it's more than visualization, because that implies it's kind of like thinking, like eye looking at something, but it's like to really feel into like the beingness of that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, the more you channel that that centeredness, the greater your, because it's not even just a matter of getting reps in and getting muscle damage, but it's like the collagen fibers, the electromagnetic fields of your organs and your body and your tissue, literally all organized for a purpose or not. It's either you're creating. You said this. I think it was one of the things I said. You're packing your collagen. I think that might have been a story, but something I recently is
Wait,
like
what? I said what?
you're packing your collagen's packed tighter. Something like, it was that phrase, like it was.
Oh, well, yeah, sometimes with the impulse stuff, I'm like, I've never felt like it, just the impact.
But so my point though, I didn't know if you said it on purpose, but I think about this a lot, is that the way your collagen fibers are, it's just basically little like collagen protein fibers that do a triple bind helix, and disorganized scar tissue is like a crisscross mesh. But the more you line and do that, you squeeze the water out and you pack those fibers tighter, so you actually remodel the connective tissue that is in your joints with impact and with impulse and with plyometrics and with intentional load that creates a jarring force in your body. And I didn't know if that was what you were alluding to, but like, that's exactly what it is. But it's like, if you think about impact, if you hit a drum really slowly, it doesn't make a noise. If you hit it sharply, it pops in a specific way. And I all of these things, this sound, this vibration, this intention, this feed forward mechanism of like really channeling it is what shape do I want to be and who do I want to be? What do I want to create with my life? It's like it goes down to the same thing you're talking about, which is like intention. Like this, and I just really think that that's like it's you channel it so well because you're this pure, like you're unabashed at this point. Like you just seem like very direct with like this is, you know what? Like you read one of your captions and you're just like, fuck it, we're going after this. I don't give a fuck. And so it's that intensity, but I don't think
Yeah.
people appreciate how necessary that is for anything in life. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
No, yeah, it does because like, okay, if one way to think about this would be like, let's say that I like to use objects. Like, let's say that this is your body and then this is you, whatever that means to people, right? It's like, this is you and you're the thing that animates your body, right?
Okay, he's got two pins in his hands.
Yeah. Sorry. If you're listening to only audio, it's like, let's say we take pen A is you and pen B is like the physical tissue, right?
Yes. Okay.
Is it right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like separate the physical tissue from you, right?
Yes.
We take the physical tissue responds to you. That's without you, the physical tissue does nothing. Like, this is again, this might be controversial. I don't know, but like, I don't even a neuron firing in the brain or whatever, like that's responding to something. That is a physical action that happens. It's not the actual cause of it. It's a response, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm saying is like the intention of the thing that's you, that you are the thing that like mocks up that which you want to create. Mm-hmm. If you don't have any mock-up of what it is that you want to create, there is no direction that you're going to go, or there's not a specific direction that you're going to go. Like it's not really that complicated. It can be made very simple. If I sit here and I have no vision, picture, mock-up, whatever you want to call it, if I have no mock-up in my head of what it is that I want a training session to be like, I want my life to be like, I want whatever it is, like if I don't have any mock-up of that, mm-hmm. What is it that determines which direction I go? Mm-hmm. If it's not that.
Yeah.
Like, what is it, right? Whether whether an individual knows that they're using it or not, whether I know that I'm using it or not, I have something there that is directing where I'm going. And so what I'm saying is the clearer that mock-up is, the more awareness you can have of what that mock-up is and how everything in your life like relates to that or doesn't relate to that, the better that is, the more intensity and intention you're going to be able to drive into what it is that you actually physically do.
Yeah.
And actually,
and I know like from a listener perspective, the language we're using is imprecise, but the hard part is these kind of conversations are the way that you move forward a public discourse, because you don't know what quote unquote scientific questions to ask until you can struggle towards a better. It takes a bunch of quote unquote artists and thinkers and philosophers, and in many ways like, and that doesn't just mean people who think in their head. It's like people who act and like do and create.
Yeah, it's got to show, for me, it's got to show some physical.
Yeah.
If it didn't change, if it didn't make actual real physical changes for me in terms of like it's the way that my body's composed and then also my life, like it wouldn't matter, but it has.
For sure. But it's like we have this post-enlightenment idea of like philosophy and art as though these kind of heady laptop jobs, but it's like these are things that people would have acted out, and you act out something awkwardly through drama, through story. You tell it over and over again like you're a comedian working on a sketch for months on tour, until you get to this is the thing I'm trying to say. And so like this conversation is probably other people say it, but it's like they don't know this to be able to prove these things, that like there's an intention that in other words, have you seen that Disney Pixar movie Soul?
No.
It's one of the few I really loved it.
I have seen The Incredibles.
Okay, that's a different thing. But
anyway,
if you want, the soul is really good. But this idea there is like there's these soul. You're gonna pop down. You have a body, but in another sense of this is like what I liked is the visual of like you as this thing that creates you're the spark in some sense, and like the thing that creates the mock-up, to use your language. It's like that is it seems to be that there's a shape. I think of this as like being in shape. It's like the mentally, physically, emotionally, like these things. I'm in shape. It's like, well, what shape for what? It's like a Phillips head screwdriver is a shape for a specific thing. Mm-hmm. And so we all have that capacity. And the more you practice and try different things, you get feedback on what shape is right for you. And what I hear in some sense you're saying, and potentially a use case of like the slow lower, is doing things that force you to become aware of the shape that is right for you almost always involve prolonged, not discomfort, but prolonged. Discomfort is another way of saying what people really mean is forced focus. Like discomfort is constant, something that will constantly pull you away from the sense of intention. And the better you get at maintaining that focused energy, the quicker you develop a sense of what your shape is supposed to be, and like your skill set kind of thing, your use, your tool, what shape your. Does that make sense? Or would you agree with that?
Uh, yeah. So basically, like, there is some process that you go through in order to get clear on what it is that you want to do.
Yes. And I think the physical is almost across the board the entry point for that. Because how else could it be? But it's before you go to talk to your therapist and do all this stuff, it's like, have you just put yourself some physical things for a prolonged period of time and just see what thoughts pop up or what happens? And, then like notice those things about yourself. You said this, it was one of the quotes you the other day. It's like, I think it was your words of, you don't see, if you don't put stress on your shit, it won't break. It's like, it's something along the lines of like, if you don't actually push yourself, you never see. I think people think that they're a lot healthier and a lot stronger, a lot more resilient than they are because they do nothing with their life. They don't put any stress, but it's like your knee may not hurt because you don't do anything with it. And I think that was the idea of what I saw underneath is like, when you stress test your body and your life and your thoughts and your perspective and your ideas, you'll see what actually holds together. And I
Yeah.
don't think people do that. And the slow lower seems to be a really low risk way of stress testing some of these, some of this like sense of self.
Yeah. No, for sure. Because I mean, I don't know, man. It holds true for anything that we're gonna do. But like, if we keep it to training, yeah. Like, I just think it is very well worth it to ask yourself to do difficult things.
Yeah.
Because for me, I guess it goes back to the flat line thing.
Yeah.
Because I was having a conversation with an individual the other day who they were, I think they were done with, they'd finished up college sports and they were doing something afterwards, and they were like, I don't, like, they didn't have a concept of how to like kind of think about training at that point, or what they wanted to do with that. And so they just like asked my thoughts on that, right? And because they're like, I'm not playing a sport. I'm not personally playing a sport. Like, why is it that I'm training? And it's just this concept of the flat line, because any or whatever things I choose to have in my life, whether it's the way that my body is, which why would I not want that to be healthy? Like, I want everything that's in my life to be as pro survival as possible. The way that my body feels, the food that I eat, the relationships that I have, the places that I go, the business that I have, the people that are in my business. I want all of that to be as pro survival as possible, because if a line doesn't stay flat, either goes up or goes down.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm training, like if we bring it now back to physical training, I don't want to, just because I'm done playing a sport or just because whatever, like I don't want to stop and have that line go flat. If I'm going to choose to put time and effort into that, I want to continue learning in that and continue growing that and continue to get better. Because if I don't, eventually that's going to come stale, and that's going to drop off to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's that concept of the flat line in every different area that you could have within your life, of like, if you're going to do something, if I'm going to do it, I want that to get better.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm not going to put time into it.
Yeah.
I don't put time into that many things. Like, I put time into the things that I'm like, this is important to me. I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a session, a person, whatever. It's like very specific, like very specific. I'm like, this is this is the mock-up, right?
Yeah.
And like that's what guys have been pulled me towards what I'm doing.
That's beautiful. That's and I love the illusions you have, which is we'll keep it a training. It's like I understand, see the parallels between your emotional or physical or psychological, like all these things. It's like you don't learn these principles in training and leave them at the gym, so to speak, or your
Yeah,
garage or
no.
whatever shed you have. You take them with you. Obviously, there's a deeper conversations, but I really think that's I want to underscore that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if, yeah.
Okay. So I also want to be mindful of your time, but I wanted to touch on another thing, which is impact training. is that? The hyper arm? The hyper arm?
Hyperarm.
Yeah. Yes.
Hmm.
Love it. It's one of those things where it's like sat there and I'm like, a lot of times like people will have something that takes me a while to like figure out like, oh yeah, I get that thing. When it comes to like my shoulders, I've been using that all the time. Like impact training. But for people that don't understand, it's like a candy cane that hooks over the top of a bar and then it swings like a pendulum and you can put weight on each side. It's like a reverse hyper, but it basically you can detach that, which is a brilliant idea. But you can use it for like shoulder and knees, and I mean, your page is full of examples of using it. But can you? I've also seen you jumping off of like insanely tall boxes and things like that. Can you just reiterate and underscore the importance of impact training and the varieties of ways, like how that impacts your body and how you perceive that?
Yeah. So impact training is the basics of it. The way that I think about it is like there's different speeds at which, let's say, a force could enter your body, and a force could enter your body very slowly, or a force could enter your body very quickly, and there's everything in between. All impact is a force that's entering your body very fast. A depth drop, force entering your body very fast. Hyper move, you impact against the hyper, and it's entering it very fast. And so that input is going to elicit a certain adaptation in your system. Specifically, as far as we know, like science we have, whatever, like let's say it's more tendon based. It's going to impact more of that tendon muscle. In between that tendon muscle relationship, it's going to impact more of that tendon side of things, where it just like it kind of takes and it makes it tighter, makes it a little more springy, right? And so that's like, to keep it simple, that is the way that I think about that's the way that I think about like impulse training. Is it's a way to get a stimulus into your body that happens very fast, that it's like your tissues or your system can be let's say lengthened and relaxed, and it's not turned off, but it's like at a certain state, and then you're asking it to turn on very, 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 very fast. So you're asked to recruit everything that you have immediately. Right. And that's different than like a slow lift. And it's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with a slow lift, but it's just specifically for impulse training. Like that is for me what it does. It asks you to turn everything on extremely fast. And even if we think about the feed forward mechanism, it's like before the impact happens, you need to prepare yourself so that you can handle that impact without in exactly the way that you want to handle it. Right. And so it's a certain type of stimulus that we can get into the body that's going to cause an adaptation that, is beneficial.
Do you ever try to surprise yourself with the impact? Because there is a learning curve a little bit with this of like getting pulling in the right direction so it doesn't start swinging crookedly. But like, do you ever try to close your eyes and surprise yourself to see that reaction? Or is that not an effective way to use
No,
it?
no, I can't say it. No, I haven't done that. No. I mean, if I were to close my eyes, like it's rhythmic. So
Yes.
I don't necessarily like want it to be super random.
Like I don't know. This is just
You could, that's something that you could potentially, closing your eyes and doing it could be interesting.
Well, I've found that like it helps me get into a little bit more the flow of the closed eyes, and it's
Uh-huh.
not, you can't fully surprise yourself because you can feel some of the tension going out of the band or the cable or whatever you have attached to it.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's you'll use it in different, like you'll have your knee swing. Maybe another thing, it's like the way you train is very obvious that you understand that everything in the body is plastic and there's no quote unquote bad position. I mean, they're stronger than others, but like you'll have it, for example, where you'll put your thighs, your hamstring on the edge of a box. So like basically your leg is hanging down like someone would do like a leg extension, but you'll have it sideways. So it will pull your knee into internal external rotation. Yank it is probably a better word for it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of a process you apply to every joint in your body just to like, you know, to build up? But you like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. So specifically with the impulse work, I'm going to use it for shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, and knee. And for each of those joints, I want to use it in every direction that they can move. So it just so happens that the hips and the shoulders rotate, as well as, flex, extend, adduct, abduct, right? So I'm going to use it in all the different directions. For the knee and for the elbow, it's going to be flexion extension because that's basically what the knee and the elbow do. And then for wrist, it's going to be, ulnar radial deviation, flexion extension, then supination, pronation. So it's applying stimulus into every different direction that joint can move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, I gotta ask about hypertrophy. It's like you look like a god now, and it's unreal. Just you train like a god, which is unreal. Like it's just, I mean, like a relative, like you are out there every single day. What do you have you noticed changes in hypertrophy? Because a lot of people are going to look at you like, how, like, but this style of training, like the rebound, like you catching the bench press and stuff, do you feel like that stimulates a little bit more muscle growth than other styles?
Yeah,
Or is that just
it's
the
interesting
intention thing?
because what's that?
Is that the intention that you're really like using every bit of the muscle, or is it
Yeah,
slower?
no, it wasn't the intention wasn't to get bigger. It just kind of happened. But
That's like I didn't mean to get rich. I just,
no, no, but it's interesting because I've been asked this question quite a bit, and something that I did feel on the slow lowers when I first started doing them is being able to tap into tissue that was, like, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's tissue that was deeper. So,
Mm,
like, if you consider, again, if we make it real, if I look at my bicep and I'm like, okay, let's say we have 100% of muscle tissue that's available in my bicep. Let's say we could do an exercise in a way where we recruit, let's say, the top 25% of that muscle fiber. So, like, literally physically feel the top 25% of my muscle fiber is what I'm using. So, like, what I started to feel during the slow lowers is like, okay, I now tapped into 40% that was a little bit deeper, 60% that was a little bit deeper, 70% that's a little bit deeper than that. And it's like, as I was able to do that, I could just very simply physically use more muscle.
mm.
That was it, right? And so then I could then take that and use that in an impulse or in a rebound rep or in those other types of things where it's just like I locked in, or I was able to connect to those deeper levels of muscle fiber, and I think that is what allowed that to happen.
Mhm.
I'll say that, and then I'll also say I think the impact work, especially weighted, so whether it's the rebound rep in terms of the bench press or some of the hyper work, I think that also, that impact on the muscle tends to do pretty well in terms of, like, blowing that up, or at least it has for me. Like, when you're moving cleanly and you're moving well and you're actually, like, using the muscle to create the movement, it's going to adapt.
Is it a fair assessment of your training that because I don't see you doing a lot of and now you're doing this you drop into these quick lower things
Yeah, I'm
where
just
like
kind of messing with those right now. Yeah.
okay, so you're still maybe that'll be a part three, you'll have an update. But basically you just like quickly you're like holding a band and just doing curls, but there's not really any tension on the bicep per se down, but it's like an extra you're holding and you're moving really quickly with an arm or with a
Mm-hmm.
leg. Is that more well, I guess you learn that. But broadly, I don't see you do a lot of like training in the middle, meaning it's very slow, very intentional, or very fast, very impactful. Like, do you say that? Have you organized most of your training to stay on the quote unquote extremes?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because
Okay.
I want it to be extreme, or I want it to provide some type of impact to the body. I think that this is an interesting question. It's causing me to think, because I'm like, why don't I just do normal squat reps or normal bench reps? I do them sometimes, but it's like, I don't know. It's like the extremes are where the most growth happens, and
It seems
where the
to me that
most.
the middle is junk volume. Like for most people, they kind of live there, and it's like okay,
Yeah, right. Like if I go do 8 reps of bench, it's like, I don't know, that it's fine, and you can push yourself really hard in it. But I've just found, like, if I'm moving super slow in a slow lower or something like that, or I'm rebounding and trying to go as fast as I can, that stimulus provides more adaptation to my body.
yeah. Well, it
It,
also seems like both of those force your attention.
yeah. That's a very good point. Like, you gotta be aware when you're doing a rebound rep bench with a bunch of weight. So it's like, yeah, it pulls. Again, we go back to the concept of kind of like pulling everything that you have available to you into what it is that you're doing. And so I think it's possible to do that with normal reps. Maybe the real reason that I don't is, like, I don't know. I want to be explosive and fast and athletic, and those things tend to play a little bit more into that.
Agreed. But I think in some sense, if you brought that much attention to those reps, they would either be faster or slower. I think that's the thing is like there's a level of okay, like
Yeah.
if you did a set of 12, like 3 sets of 12, whatever, what are the first 10 reps? It's kind of like it's not a heavy enough weight to really force your attention for rep 2, 3, and 4, but it's too heavy to really, go slow and controlled on reps 7, 8, 9. So it's or like 9, 10, 11. It's like so you kind of in this weird thing, which is like the most important movements of life don't necessarily they need either utter control or utter rapidity. And it seems like I 100% think that that's a very smart way. That's what I've been trying to do more of.
Yeah.
Unless there's like skill repetition where you're moving slow to try and like, like let's say juggle, like it's something where you're kind of like getting grooving something. But that seems to be a very different thing than creating a stimulus on tissue. Huh. I like that. I think it's great. Like I really love that perspective.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point because it made me think a little bit about it too. Is like, let's say we were to do a normal bench or a normal squat for like a set of 8, we could do that in a way where it's like, okay, I'm going to, even if my feet don't leave the ground, I'm still going to lower as fast as I can, and I'm going to press back up as fast as I can,
Yeah.
or I'm going to drive back up as fast as I can, right? It's that intention that drives it.
Yeah.
And
If
so,
you were to give the choice between those two of 3 set of 8, however, and a set of 8 with intention, which do you think is going to get more results? Very obviously the second. And then
yeah,
why would you do the
the
first?
one that has the mock-up, like
Yeah,
the one that you're actually doing something for a purpose with, like that's going to provide the most output for you.
All right, two last quick questions for you because I know you got to roll. What is your perspective on stretching? Do you do much stretching, or do you think about like mobility, like non in the gym kind of thing, in terms of maintaining flexibility, mobility?
I personally don't stretch at all. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. From my lens, from my perspective, it doesn't necessarily make sense because when I'm doing something like, basic concept of stretching is like you feel something, you get feedback and you feel sensation. That's what I'm looking to not do. Because for me, when I'm stretching, like let's say we have a hamstring and we have a hamstring muscle that's at a certain degree of muscle length, and we are, hinging at our hip to then apply movement to the hamstring or to apply a force to the hamstring, but the hamstring doesn't actually move, and the hamstring not moving is what creates the sensation of stretch. If the hamstring were to actually physically lengthen, then you wouldn't feel anything because you wouldn't be pulling against it. Does that make sense? Like if a hamstring was fully lengthened and the quad was fully shortened, I wouldn't feel a sensation of stretch, or at least I wouldn't until I was in a much deeper position. But if the hamstring is kind of stuck, if the hamstring muscle tissue itself is actually like stuck halfway, and I hinge forward and I try to like without lengthening the hamstring, just like put mechanical tension against that, the hamstring isn't actually moving. You're just feeling the stretch because the hamstring is stuck in halfway. So I want to be able to fully lengthen and shorten muscles, not just feel a stretch and apply it without the muscle actually moving.
So in some sense, you think of most stretching. I would say most because it's probably not in some sense, but most stretching as artificially holding tension in a tissue so that you can feel it.
It's not necessarily artificial. It's just like, if I don't have the purpose of or intent of lengthening the hamstring, then I'm going to feel a stretch there. And just, it doesn't fit in with the whole paradigm that I've talked about. Like I don't want feedback. So why am I going to sit there and try to feel a stretch?
Okay. And then in that sense, whatever you're naturally, the movements you're in, the range you're using will keep the muscle and tissue healthy in that range. And if you have to,
I still want to go through full range with everything, 100%. I want to be able to get into as extreme and deep of ranges as possible. It's just the difference is I'm not looking at it for a stretch. I want to be able to get into that range of motion without feeling anything.
Got it. So in some sense, okay, I think that's a word linguistic thing that we'd have to probably dig into. Can you do a split? Are you able to do in the deeper splits or close to it?
No. And maybe everyone will be like, oh, well, he's full of shit. All of my mobility is really good. My groin, haven't been able to figure that one out. It's terrible.
The body map I have says that's an intimacy thing, but who knows? But it is interesting to think about that. I like that. I like the perspective though, is like you're maintaining it, and in a sense, if you would. So one person's stretch where they're just getting there and like feeling something, you're like actively considering a strength. I would imagine most of your deep slow lowers are probably someone else would consider that someone else might call that a stretch, whereas the intention underneath, like you bringing intention to them, really trying to open this tissue and move it like really intentionally, slow and controlled to like own this. Whereas they're like, I'm just going to stretch to see what happens. So it may not be the outward presentation; it's the inward intention. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, like it could actually look like the same thing. Like I want, like I said, I want to be in the full range of what a hamstring can do, in the full range of what a pec can do. I just don't want to feel it because
I love it.
When I'm in a stretch, like I don't feel like I can pop out of it.
Yes.
So that's
good. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. All right. Last 30-second one. If you die, what impact do you want to have on the world? Have you thought about that? Have you like crystallized that? You know,
If
like
I
the
die,
impact.
what impact?
Well, like when you die, like, or what impact would you like to have on the world? Just broadly, you don't have to die
Oh
for it.
man. Uh, I mean, there's, I don't know. That's a tough question. Like, so for myself, I'd want to be able to have pulled everything out of myself that I can. For my family, I want to be able to like provide a life for them that, I don't know, they love and didn't expect, I guess. Like, I like that idea of being able to provide and just be like, I don't know, that guy. Like for me, whatever reason like that interests me. That's what I want to be able to do for that. For like, as far as my business goes, and then other individuals that are like, involved with me in terms of like groups. Number one, I want to be able to like get out the technology that I have, so that others can also understand. Like, I feel really good. Like I want others to be able to do that too, right? So I want to be able to get that technology out. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, like on a larger scale, just have people work better together. Like I don't know, I don't have that one fully fleshed out yet, but it's like, you know, yeah, I just want to take an impact and be able to help people get better. Because for me, like I think people are, an individual is generally good, right? And so for me, like for myself first, I want to be able to pull out the entirety of what that means for me, like what good is for me, and then I want to be able to help others do that too, so that they have their own trust in themselves, and like, I don't know, like they can do what they're supposed to do.
That's beautiful.
That's what fires me up.
That's beautiful. So what I hear you saying is that on your gravestone you want that guy to be written very strongly. I'm that guy. But more specifically, I think that message of feed forward. I really think that like that hits to your core of your identity, like feed forward, because it's about intention, it's about focus, about getting the thing you want, making the best, and like really creating, being the mock up of your life. So
Yeah, and those things being good. Like,
yeah. Well, it would be a fucked up person to have a mock up.
Right.
I don't know. It would be interesting, but I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
gonna happen. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you joining. I'll put links to everything below, but this has been really valuable.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, load. Dude, at some point I want to ask you about Scientology and like how that is, because I hear you talking. I've seen some of the stuff, and so I know that
Yeah.
like that's like the lining in between like how you've processed it and a lot of this stuff. But